Pranam. Welcome to the Tuesday class. We start with the prayers. Namo Orientanam, Namo Suttanam, Namo Ayariyanam, Namo Utsayanam, Namo Loe Sappasahunam, Eso Panchanamukkaro Sappapavapanasano, Manglanancha Sappesim Padmam Havai Mangalam. Namo Orientanam, Namo Sittanam, Namo Ayariyanam, Namo Utsayanam, Namo Loe Sappasahunam. Eso Panchanamukaro Sappa Pavapanasano Manglanancha Sappesim Padmam Havai Mangalam. Namo Arihantanam, Namo Sittanam, Namo Ayaryanam, Namo Uvatsahunam. Eso Panchanamukaro Sappa Pavapanasano Manglanancha Sappesim Padmam Havai Mangalam. Veera Sarasura Surendra Mahito Virambuta Sansrita Virena Bhihata Swakarma Nichayo Viraya Nityam Nama Veera Tirthamidam Pravrutamatulam Veerashikhoram Tapo Veere Sri Truti Kirtikanti Nichaya Sri Veerabhadram Visa Kamathe Dharanendra Cha Sochitam Karma Kurvati Prabhustulya Manovrutti Parshanath Sriyestu Vaha अंगूठे अमृतवसे लपति तणा भंडार श्री गुरु गौतम समरिये मनवांछित फल दातार. We'll carry on with the same topic that we've been discussing for the past couple of weeks, trying to answer the question or make us think about the fundamental question of Adhyatma, philosophy. What is my true nature? Who am I? And we've explored this in different ways. Last week, we talked about the consequences of choices that we make. And in relation to that, we heard about the story of Gun Sen and Agni Sharma from the narrative of the actual text called Samraditya Kevali Charitra. And you all heard the story. Ajitbhai has subsequently sent a short version of that story, which was supplied to me by Deepa, one of our class members. And that, in summary, gives the relationship between Gunsen and Agni Sharma over subsequent lives and how they interact with each other, one with the choice that has come down to him, even without realizing it's a consequence of the choice that he made, that I must hate this person. So Agni Sharma had made that choice or traded his tap in exchange for revenge, life after life, and he is granted that wish. Gun Sen, on the other hand, chose to be repentant of the wrong that he had done and be sad about the harm that was caused to Agni Sharma, and is constantly becoming more and more internally peaceful and growing spiritually once he understands the true nature of life. And as a result of that understanding, Gun Sen's soul is progressively being uplifted, and each subsequent life, Gun Sen ends up with a good life, good birth, and also has the level of vairagya, the level of detachment, to give up the life of a householder and to take diksha, and progressively he becomes more and more spiritually uplifted. And we looked at that just out of interest. There is another version that somebody else, Shalina, has shown me, which is also an English version. And I understand that it is also in 3 volumes, so it's a translation of that text in English. I wasn't aware that there's a PDF version available, but this is probably a slightly different version from the uh, paper hardback 3 volume English text on Samraditya Kevali Charitra. As I mentioned last week, there is also, if those of you are interested, there is a YouTube narrative. If you just type in Samraditya Mahakatha, you can listen to, I think there are about, when we looked at it, about 80 or 100 or maybe more episodes when the story is recited. And I think it is in Gujarati or Hindi, but if you're interested, it's also a very good listen. Enough about Samraditya Kevali Charitra. What we would like to focus on, and going back again, is asking ourselves this question. If we, all of us who attend this class and have got some level of acceptance of the understanding of the fundamental philosophical statements that Jain Darshan, Jain Dharma has taught us, and we all accept the fundamental concept of the existence of the soul and the nature of the soul as being eternal. And we have also accepted the idea that the soul has come from somewhere and is going somewhere, and the consequences of all its choices and actions as thoughts and words and deeds result in the binding of karmas, which will come to fruition in subsequent lives. If they are not shed or they are not modified, then they will, by their very nature, give the soul experiences that those karmas are designed to give. And so the cycle of life and death continues almost for infinity. So if all of us have reached a stage where you accepted the idea of the true nature of the soul, what is it that holds us back in terms of spiritual progress? And I think it's a very important question for us to understand. And this is a question that our Guru Bhagwans are constantly asking us and are constantly trying to open our eyes to the idea of who we are. So, what is it that makes it so difficult? So, if we say by in terms of knowledge, in terms of acceptance, we accept that idea. But if we then ask ourselves, are we actually, have we actually internalized that acceptance of that idea? Now, what would that mean? If we say that I am the soul and I am not the body, then that distinction between the soul and the body, is that something that we experience? And most of the time we do not. So that duality continues to persist, meaning even though the soul and the body are different, our identification is with the body. So we see ourselves as one with the body, meaning we cannot visualize or imagine ourselves as being distinct from the body and from all that is associated with the body. So what is associated with the body? The health of the body, the ill health of the body, the experiences of pain and pleasure that the body experiences, the use of the senses and everything that we experience through our or experience through our senses. We are identifying with all those things as internal to our own existence. So we do not actually distinguish ourselves from those experiences. Also, all our relationships in this life, which are connected to this body that we occupy, all those relations, all those relationships, mother, father, wife, husband, children, brother, sister, the wider community, we have a sense of identity and a sense of belonging to that community, and we see ourselves as part of that. We also identify ourselves with our things. We call it my clothes, my material wealth, my house, my car, my things. So our constant experience is that of unity with what is not really us or ours. So why does this ignorance persist? And what is the result of that ignorance means that we will continue to go from life after life. So birth, death, that cycle will continue because we do not have the need or the desire, we do not perceive we do not have the desire to experience the soul because we are so engrossed in the experiences that this association with the body gives us, and we can't detach ourselves from that. And our identification, if we look at that, so when we talked about Nigod and the time when the soul existed in Nigod, in Avyavara Rasi, meaning non-circulatory section of it, where the infinite number of souls occupying one body, living together, dying together in a very, very short lifespan. There is no identification or distinction between one life form or the other. So there was no particular name attached to it. But the moment we get out of Nigod, when one soul goes to moksha and our lottery number has come up and we are released from Avyavahar Rasi Nigod to Vyavahar Rasi Nigod, we come into circulation. And the moment we enter the circulation in one sense, two sense, three sense life forms, then we, from that moment onwards, have an identity. So if you are, say, one sense life form, a plant, so then the plant may be a rose bush, the plant may be an orange tree, the plant may be an apple tree, the plant may be something that is identifiable, or it may be that we are occupying a body of fire in its many different forms, or we are identifying or we are part of a body of water, or Prithvi, Prithvikai, Apkai, Tevkai, Vaukai, Vanaspatikai, and Beindriya, Teindriya, Chaurindriya, two sensed, three sensed, four sensed, and then Panchendriya, five sensed. So five sensed life forms as either Dev, Narak, Tiryanch, like dog, cat, rat, any of those different life forms, wild, domesticated, all the different forms. And ultimately, Manushya, meaning human beings, could be either with a mind or without a mind, Sangni and Asangni. In all those subsequent forms of life, we have an identity, and we identify ourselves with that identity. And that is so powerful that we can't distinguish ourselves from that identity. Let me just read this in Gujarati. And it may be, the words may be a bit difficult, but we will go through them and I'll try and translate. This is, by the way, from an appendix, which is part of the final pages of Param Pujya Acharya Mukti Darshan Suriswaji Maharaj Sahib's discourses on Anandaghan Chovisi, and the appendix is the this particular appendix is part of the third volume. And this is something that we'll be discussing in greater detail with our Wednesday class, probably in another year or so. The current Anandaghan Chovisi class on Wednesday, we've still got about 3 stavans before we come to this appendices. But some of the things that are being discussed here, though difficult, are actually a very good opening onto how we need to understand this and how we should be thinking about it. The particular appendix is actually titled, what we started, our title, it's called Nirvan Thi Nigod Thi Nirvan Sudhini Nai Sapeksh Yatra. So from Nigod to Nirvan, Nirvan means moksha. नई सापेक्ष yatra, meaning a journey through different viewpoints, trying to understand the journey of the soul from Nigod to Moksha or Nigod to Nirvana. This particular paragraph starts in its describing Vyavarnai. I won't go into Naigam Sangranai, that's where it starts. But this particular uh, Vyavarnai, it starts like this. Kaળ, સ્વભાવ, કર્મ, ભવિતવ્યતા અને પુરુષાર્થ. એ પાંચ કારણ સમવાયમાંથી ભવિતવ્યતાની મુખ્યતા થયે છતે તે નિગોદના જીવનું સૂક્ષ્મ નિગોદમાંથી નીકળી બહાર વ્યવહારમાં આવવું અને તેનું પૃથ્વીકાય આદિ નામકરણ થવું. બીજાની સાથે વ્યવહારમાં એટલે કે સંગમાં આવવું અને બીજાની સાથે વ્યવહાર થવો તે વ્યવહાર નહીં સાપેક્ષ મંતવ્ય છે. અર્થાત તે વ્યવહાર નહીં સંયત ક્રિયા છે કે જેમાં જીવનું નામકરણ છે. મીનિંગ the soul for the first time has a name attached to it. As opposed to being in Nigod, there is no name. You are part of a body that you all occupy together. અને જીવના ભેદ છે. Means there is distinction between different types of life forms. એ જીવનું નિગોદની અવ્યવહાર રાશિમાંથી વ્યવહાર રાશિમાં આવાગમન છે. એ અવ્યવહાર રાશિની સુષુપ્ત અવસ્થામાંથી વ્યવહાર રાશિની સક્રિયતામાં પ્રવેશે છે. એટલે from અવ્યવહાર રાશિ where there is almost no other activity, it comes into the Vyavhar Rasi where it is able to be active. The soul is able to, the body, the life that it accepts has some activity. વ્યવહાર એ સંગ્રહનો વિધિપૂર્વક ભેદ કરે છે અને પરપુદ્ગલ સાથે અભેદ વ્યવહાર કરે છે. પરપુદ્ગલ સાથે અભેદ વ્યવહાર કરે છે. Meaning that we, having combined with non-life, pudgal means matter, material. So the soul occupying a body, the soul is life, the body is non-life, but the association with it suggests that it shows that this combined unit of life and non-life, so Jeev and Pudgal, is a unit, and what it says here, પર પુદ્ગલ સાથે અભેદ વ્યવહાર કરે છે. The soul identifies itself with that per pudgal. That means the seeds of that ignorance are there. Going forward, it says, સ્થૂલ રુજુસૂત્ર નહીં, વ્યવહાર રાશિમાં ભવિતવ્યતાના પરિપાકથી. Now, listen to this and I'll explain in a minute in English. ભવિતવ્યતાના પરિપાકથી આવ્યે છતે. Now, we say that the 5 reasons why, or the 5 some why, meaning when a particular event happens, what are the various influences for the occurrence of that event that determine that this particular event will occur. So Kaળ, meaning it is the right time for that event to occur. Swabhav, meaning that the nature of the event that is occurring to that particular entity happens because that is the nature of that association or that independent entity, karma. So karma as a powerful influencer or catalyst will also determine what exactly happens. Bhavitavyata, meaning that this is something that is predetermined or something that was bound to occur, bhavitavyata. And last, purusharth, as a result of effort. So when we begin to identify with everything that we do, we connect the dots. I woke up this morning, I went to work, I had a meeting with my colleagues, we made some changes to a document, we agreed on certain things, and that document is now a better representation of the service that we want to roll out. So two of my colleagues and myself, we were sitting there working through the document, and each of us will probably accept an ownership of our effort and the result of that effort that came through in a statement about the nature of the service and what we should be doing and what we should not be. So that identification with that piece of work, we think that we have made the effort, therefore, that document has come into being. Now it will go through several other reiterations, but ultimately we identify ourselves with we have an ownership of that. Now all that identification of something that was bound to happen. We have just been instruments or catalysts for that process. That is all that it was. And this is true about everything that we do in life. The biggest influencer for us individually as the soul that determines our experiences is karma that we have bound ourselves previously. So here it says, Vyavhar Rasima Bhavitavyatana Paripakthi Avye Chate Karano Paripaktata. So when the time is right, જીવ અચર્માવર્ત કાળ ઓળંગી ચરમ પુદ્ગલ પરાવર્તનમાં આવે છે. So when the development of the soul, just by virtue of the direction in which it would be going, it enters the time where it is going to be in its final cycle. Avarth is a cycle. Avarth. Charam Avarth. Charam Avarth means the last Avarth of that cycle, life after life, that circulation. So when the soul enters that final cycle, meaning that at the end of that final cycle, or at the beginning of that final cycle, its journey towards moksha is being set just by virtue of the nature of that occurrence or the nature of that soul, that your time is right now, and that is why you begin to develop spiritually. So what happens at that time? What it says here, ચરમાવર્ત કાળ ઓળંગી ચરમ પૂદગલ પરાવર્તમાં આવે છે, ત્યાં પણ કર્મ પરિણામ મહારાજાની મહેરબાની થતા જીવને પોતે કોણ છે. So at that point, if the level of monia karma goes down sufficiently, the soul begins to ask itself this question: who am I? કર્મ પરિણામ મહારાજની મહેરબાની થતા જીવને પોતે કોણ છે તેની ઓળખ થાય છે. So he begins to ask that question and then begins to recognize that distinction. પોતે જડ નથી પણ ચેતન છે. So I am not non-life, I am life. And that recognition only happens when we are in the final cycle of our પરિભ્રમણ in સંસાર. ચેતનમાં પણ અતીત અનાગત સ્વરૂપે નથી, પણ વર્તમાનમાં વર્તતો છે. Meaning that currently I am the soul. વર્તમાનમાં પણ વર્તતા અનંતા પોતાના જેવા બીજા જીવો છે. We also recognize that there are infinite life forms, infinite number of lives which are similar to me. પરંતુ તે બીજા જીવોથી તદ્દન ભિન્ન સ્વકીય રૂપે છે, પણ પરકીય નથી. Meaning, beginning to recognize that there are other souls like me, similar to me, but I am distinct from those souls. Each one of us is distinct, so we are individual entities. આવી પોતાની આગવી ઓળખ. So, meaning the recognition of that independent જીવ existence, this is my nature, જ્યાં થાય છે તે સ્થૂળ રુજુસૂત્ર નહીં સાપેક્ષ જીવ વિષયક વિચારણા છે. So from that angle, the soul progresses to that understanding. જે સ્વરૂપ વિચારણા છે. So that gets us to the point where we are recognizing the nature of ourselves. પોતાપણાની આગવી પ્રતીતિ અત્રે થાય છે. And at that point, the soul recognizes its true nature. હુંનું ભાન થાય છે. Who am I? સ્વભાન થતા, સ્વ means self, નું ભાન થતા જે પૂર્વે અભાન અને બેભાન હતો તે સભાન થાય છે. So at that point, the soul begins to recognize itself. Until then, it could not distinguish itself from that association. So if we say that we have reached that stage, we don't know. Only a Keval Gnani or a Tirthankar Paramatma would know at what stage of spiritual development we all are and how far have we reached and how long the journey ahead of us towards moksha is. One would hope that one has entered the Charamavarth card. By the way, Charamavarth card is not a short amount of time. Bharatbhai, help me out. How many Utsarpini, Avsarpini, or how would you describe the length of... Is Bharatbhai here with us?
Pranam, Jai Jagannath.
Pranam, Bharatbhai.
Haji.
So, Charamavarth card.
It is an extremely, compared to what one has gone through, it's definitely a shorter time, but a very, very long time in terms of that will even mean that it would be a very, very long time. However, that is a time, when we say that the Utkrust bandh that we do is like Sinter Krodakori Sagrupam. And when you say that you are going to enter the Charmavat card, is like when you come to less, when your karma binding is less than 1 Krodakori Sagrupam, that is the time when you enter the Charmavat card. But even then, that is a very, very, very long time. It could mean Anant, it could mean Asankyat Kar Chakra.
Heart chakra, yeah.
Yeah.
But does that also, so I was thinking that the
Sorry, not Asankyat, but would be more like, Sankyat. But even that Sankyat is a very, very long time.
but
Yeah.
I thought that that happened, the binding of karmas to its maximum and not beyond that maximum uh, would only be limited to that particular maximum once the soul achieves samyaktva for the first time.
The time when when the soul enters the Charmavatkar, that is the time when it is uh, during that from that time onwards to the time when it attains Samyak Darshan. That will be the period of the number of car chakras that would the soul would
Uh-huh.
go through.
Yeah.
But even then, that would be a tremendously large
Long
amount
time.
of
Yeah.
cycles. But when it enters, once it attains Samyak Darshan, then it only goes through what they call Earth Bhutkal Aparavatan card. That would sort of limit its journey.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So thank you, Bharat. So basically, it's still an extremely long time. So even if you have entered Charamavartkal, we may still have millions or billions of further lives ahead of us before we go to moksha. We don't know whether we would entered that. Now, each soul's journey varies. Just some example, which I'm sure many of you have heard of. The shortest journey of the soul that we hear about was Bhagwan Rishabdev's mother, Marudevi Mata, who the soul of Marudevi Mata, when she exited Nigodh, when that soul exited Nigodh, the first life was that of a plant, kind of a tree. That's my understanding. I may be wrong. During that life as a tree, the tree suffered a constant barrage of pricking discomfort from maybe some thorny bush that was around it or next to it. And because it experienced this pain without any great sort of instinctive dislike or just silently accepted the fate that fate had decreed on it. And as a result of that, the next life was that of a human being. And because that was the nature of that particular soul, not just any ordinary human being, but the mother of a Tirthankar Paramatma. And in that life, after having spent a long time crying, almost going blind because of crying. And the reason for crying was that she constantly wept to because she was worried and sad that her son Rushabh had left the palace, the household, gone out in search of the truth by himself, and she constantly worried what is happening to my son. And as a mother, that was very painful for her. And when Bhagwan Rishabdev, this was the time when Bhagwan Rishabdev had taken Diksha and was uh, doing his sadhana. She kept on asking and she kept on weeping, and she kept on asking Bharat Maharaja, Chakravarti Bharat, who was, as we all know, the eldest son of Bhagwan Rushabdev, what's happening. And once when Bharat Chakravarti hears the news that Bhagwan Rushabdev has now achieved Keval Gnan, and then he says to his grandmother that you have been crying so much for your son, Bhagwan Rushabdev. Let me take you to see how well he is and how many sort of uh, people looking after him, devs and all kinds of great people or big people are looking after him. So he takes her, and some of you may have seen this picture. He takes her on a elephant, which is properly suited for a ride. And this is the picture that I've seen. And she goes with it towards the Samvasran, where Bhagwan Rushabdev, the Devs have created a Samvasran, and Bhagwan Rushabdev is sitting. And Bharat, as soon as it is the scene comes Singhasan on a throne inside the Samvasarana at the top. She tells him that, look, you were worried about your son. He tells her, sorry, Bharat Chakravarti tells Marudeva Mata that, look, you were worried about your son, Bhagwan Rushabdev. Look at how grand he looks. Look at the throne on which he's sitting. Look at how he looks. Look at all the people, all the devs, everybody there in service of him. So the scene in a Samvasrana. And then seeing that, she begins to think that I was crying for no reason, that my son's physical self is fine, but this connection, this rag, this attachment that I had with him, and the pain that it has produced, makes her realize the distinction between her as the soul and the body and all the connections with everything else that's associated with the body. And she becomes enlightened, and within a very short time, as she is approaching the Samvasran, she attains Kevalgyan. So for that soul, the journey from Nigod to the life that ended with her going to moksha, there's only one life in between. For us, there's probably been an infinite number of life. And as you all know, the lives of the Tirthankar Paramatmas are not even mentioned or discussed before they achieve that level of enlightenment. So when we say Mahavir Bhagwan Satyavis Bhav, when you say the 27 lives of Bhagwan Mahavir, we are talking from this time of his first life when he achieved Samyaktva or Samyak Darshan. Only then the counting starts. So for all of us, the counting may not even have begun. So what is that realization that we are talking about? This narrative progresses very nicely, and there's a different viewpoint now, and it's called Sukshma Ruju Sutranai. It says આ નયની માન્યતા અનુસાર જીવને પોતાનું અંતકરણ એ જ પોતાનું લાગે છે. From that particular angle, the soul begins to recognize its inner self. પણ તે જ અંતકરણની તદ્દન નજીક અડીને રહેલ કાયા. So, with that recognition of the soul, but also what is very closely associated with the soul, meaning the body, Vani, meaning the speech, Swasoswas, meaning the breathing in and out, Halan, meaning movement, Halan Chalanadi, Chesta potana lagta nathi. So at that stage of development, the soul begins to recognize that everything else is not mine or of me. What is not mine or of me? My body, my speech, my breathing in and out, Kaya, Vani, Sososas, Halan, Chalan, Adi. So the distinction, we call it Vedgnan, I am the soul. All this, etc., that is happening out is not of me. It is outside of me. Though I am very closely associated with it, I'm still distinct from it. અહીં અંતકરણને સુધારવા ઉપર લક્ષ્ય છે. So there the focus is on improving the inner self. તેથી અંતકરણમાં વર્તતી રાગાદી ભાવોની વિકૃતિ. So then recognizing what are the faults within me. So rag adi, rag dvesh, that is not my nature. I don't have any attachment. I don't have any hatred to anybody else. My true nature is accepting all life is similar to me and having infinite prem or infinite karuna towards all life forms. Ragadi bhavani vikruti, and whatever I am feeling, attachment and hatred for different life forms, it is actually not my true nature. It is a vikruti, meaning it is a fault. It is an abomination, or it is a pollutant. રાગાદી ભાવોની વિકૃતિ એ પણ પોતાની લાગતી નથી, પણ અંતકરણની નિર્મળતા. So then it begins to recognize the true nature. નિર્મળતા meaning the purity. ગુણોનો વિકાસ, the virtues of the soul. દોષોનો હ્રાસ meaning the virtues and the growth of the virtues. The faults and the destruction of the faults, દોષોનો હ્રાસ, અને તેમાં પણ અહમ વૃત્તિનું અનુત્થાન. Pride, aham vrittinu anuthan, meaning the identification with the non-self. Ahamnu apravartan, meaning dissolving the ego, aham ego. Age potana samjhay છે. So begins to understand, so becomes completely or begins to understand the nature of being free of the ego. ટૂંકમાં કહીએ તો અહીંયા આત્મા એના મૌલિક સ્વરૂપમાં જેવો છે તેવો હજી સમજાયો નથી, તેથી તેની તે સ્વરૂપે શ્રદ્ધા થઈ નથી, તેથી ઉપયોગમાં શુદ્ધ આત્મતત્વની ઝલક આવી નથી, પણ મનસ્થિતિ કેવી હોવી જોઈએ એની સમજ ઊંડાણ પકડાયું છે. So the soul hasn't really reached that stage at this point where it completely recognizes itself, but it begins to understand that if I were to experience my true nature and experience what I truly am, then my mind would actually be accepting its true nature in this way. So what it says, પણ મનસ્થિતિ કેવી હોવી જોઈએ, મનની સ્થિતિ, the nature of my mind in that state of my being aware of my or experiencing my independent nature as the soul, એની સમજ ઊંડાણ પકડાયું છે. So he begins to understand the depth of that. તેથી મનને નિર્મળ બનાવવા ઉપર પ્રતિ સમયની જાગૃતિ વર્તે છે. So at that stage, if we ever reach that stage in this life, then there is a constant awareness of how we progressively improve મનને નિર્મળ બનાવવા માટે, how we improve the functioning of our mind. So that means wrong thoughts associated with pride, greed, lust, rag, dvesh, all those things, all our inner experiences, we are aware of those things and we make an active effort to walk away from that and to resolve that. તેથી મનને નિર્મળ બનાવવા ઉપર પ્રતિ સમયની જાગૃતિ વર્તે છે. So for each moment, that soul is aware of what is happening in the mind, inside, and remains vigilant. So that awareness that I'm going in a different direction, that is not my true nature, pulls you back. માત્ર શબ્દના અર્થને સમજવાપણું જ નથી. It's not just understanding the words, પણ ભાવને પકડીને, but recognize the depth of the meaning of that, એની ઉપર આરૂઢ થઈ. So you are riding that. સમગ્ર અંતકરણને બદલી નાખવા ઉપરનું લક્ષ્ય છે. So the focus is on changing the inner self to what it essentially is. So all that pollutants that are within it, you're trying to get rid of it. શાસ્ત્રમાં તે વિહંગમ માર્ગ અને પીપલિકા માર્ગ બતાવેલ છે. તે ઉભયમાંથી પીપલિકા માર્ગ પકડી ઉર્ધ્વારોહણ ઉર્ધ્વગતિનો પ્રારંભ આ ભૂમિકાએ થાય છે. We'll end here reading this particular, because I think it gets more and more difficult and there are lots of different concepts. So that we haven't gone into, but just when you hear the word nai, what is nai? Nai is a vikalp, meaning a point of view. And from a certain point of view, you look at certain things from that point of view and you begin to sort of analyze and dissect and try and reach the true nature of things. So it is exploring different aspects of this and to arrive at the truth. And ultimately, the goal is looking at things from different aspects, but ultimately to arrive at the understanding of the true nature of the whole. Meaning, you begin to understand and you begin to actually experience the true nature of the whole. But the path through which you need to go is you need to hold on to one thread and explore that. So from this angle, this is what it looks like. And you then go beyond naimati nayatit avasthama. You actually go on far beyond what I'd ever thought that we would actually start talking about in this class. So I remember when we started this class as an introduction to Jain Dharma, after the first class, there was a bit of a disquiet that this is quite difficult. And that is when Sandipai and we decided that in addition, maybe we should go to something more basic. So that is why the Thursday classes were started. The Tuesday classes, we started off just as a simple introduction and discussing this level of uh, philosophy was not really something that we were going to approach. That's why we concentrated on different charitras, we concentrated more on stories. But for the past 3 weeks, we have gone significantly beyond that. And I don't know how well these 3 classes have been received or understood. I know the story of Samraditya, Kevli Charitra, Gunsen and Agni Sharma last week produced a lot of interest. But what the central theme around the last 3 classes has been understanding the true nature of ourselves, meaning Adhyatma, the core principles of philosophy, Jain Dharma. So I won't be here for the next 2 weeks. Sandeepai will organize some deals. I'm not sure exactly what has been organized, but any comments, feedbacks, criticisms on today or the last 3 weeks in total, please, and then we will end today. Or any questions?
Jai Jinendra, Ajitbhai.
Ah,
So you said that that clock may not have even begun for
yes,
us.
yes,
Yeah.
we don't know.
But
Sorry.
you then also shared one story
Yeah.
where Rishabh Dev's mother's
Mm.
was only one life, and then
Yeah.
So my thought here was, if it hasn't, of course, started for us,
Mhm.
do I just keep living in this worry or misery or fear? I don't know whether it will start.
So there is one simple uh, statement that if you are beginning to worry that am I actually ever going to moksha or not, then even asking yourself that particular question means that there is a significant amount of progress. So, and it is a good question. Should I worry? That worry that am I really understanding who I am should prompt us to continue to ask our questions regularly or constantly and say, look, everything that I'm doing, reacting to the circumstances around me and what the emotions that I generate in that reaction, are they of me? Are they not of me? Are they beneficial to me? Are they harmful to me? The connection that I'm making. So when you begin your thought process in that direction, then that is significant. That is actually a significant step and it progresses. But understanding that true nature, having an interest, so the very fact that having an interest in listening and progressing on to uh, the desire to dig deeper, even that in itself is significant progress. So what we also discussed in Arthadayana Sutra, what are the rarities? Having a human life is a rarity. Having a human life in a Jain cool is a rarity. Having been born as a Jain and then having an interest in listening to what it's about is a rarity. So each one of them are progressive. Going beyond that, having the desire and an interest in what spiritual life of a monk or a nun would be an extreme rarity. And then, like these two young boys having a desire, but also fulfilling that desire, I want to become a monk or a nun. So all those things are progressive rarities. So in many ways, I would hope that all of us who are here asking ourselves these questions and spending an hour and contemplating on it for the rest of the week, that does suggest that we've made some progress, I would think. But in truth, we don't know how long our journey beyond is. Only a Keval Gnani Bhagwan would know.
So, when you're on your own, you don't react to many things because you are either working, just concentrating, or having your own time. But as soon as you are with the group of people, you do react about anything and everything in different ways.
So let me take you a step deeper. Sorry, what's your name?
Megha.
Megha. Okay. Megha J.
Megha Jain, yes.
Yeah, okay. And Megha, when we say that when we are on our own, we are concentrating, we are not. What I'm urging all of us to do is that examine that state when we believe that we are at peace. Examine that state and try and recognize whether that peace or that equanimity or that lack of raga and dvesh is actually real. And the deeper you go into it, even in moments when we are on our own, you may recognize that what may. So if you are, say, in dhyan and your mind is completely still, which we would not be even when we are working, try and examine what is going on deeper inside your subconscious mind. And one would recognize that even in those moments, when we think that we are at peace, there is some level of upheaval going on. And how deep that upheaval is and how powerful that upheaval is results in the binding of karmas. So constantly, at every samay, every minuscule second, we are binding 7 karmas all the time. It's only the Ayushya karma for the next life that we bind only once in our lifetime. But all other karmas are being bound constantly. So if the karmas are being bound, that is being bound because the nature of the soul itself is reacting to everything that's going on around, whether we are with people or they are on our own. You're right that there is a greater uh, likelihood of us reacting to different things when we are in a group and we are constantly engaged with people and there is a greater scope. And when we are on our own, we are probably have a greater scope of being calmer. But we want to reach a stage whether we are with people or whether we are not, whether we are reacting or interacting with, we are either interacting with people, we are still retaining the awareness of our identity as separate from all this. That is what Guru Bhagavans are trying to teach us, that that is the state that we want to reach.
Okay.
Hard work, a lot of work, but the path to it is getting deeper and deeper into it, understanding more, learning more about the different ways of looking at things, reading more, listening to more. The greater, the more effort that we make in that direction, you will actually find that our lives become much more peaceful. And if you look at our Muni Bhagwans, our Sadhu Bhagwans, Sadhviji Bhagwans, the peace in their heart comes from that introspection that is constantly going on. And the level of happiness is greater than that of happiness in devloks. So that peace and joy that you begin to experience, it's just an inkling of a very minuscule part of what the true nature, the true joy of the soul in its pure form is. But once one begins to understand that nature of that joy, then our interest in everything else would disappear. That is what I hear from, or what I read from people who are experiencing. And when you see those people, you recognize that they are living on a different level completely. So it's thinking about all those different things that slowly helps us progress. Hope that helps, Megha.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank
thanks.
you.
Any other questions? Okay, SS is that it's stimulating. So what that tells me is that you all like stories, but you also like this. Uh, is that SS is probably Shalina? I don't know, but uh, so if you want to go deeper into this, then we could go into more difficult subjects. But let's see. Okay, so that question of what we are going to do for the next course is still pending out there. Sandeep and I have not made a decision yet. We are talking about the Tuesday class. So keep your ideas flowing. Keep on sending your ideas. Okay. Any other question?
Just one more question. Sorry.
Yeah,
And when
no?
you said that there are those asunk time, even when the clock starts,
Mhm.
it could be finite, infinite, whatever. Is that surely Manushya Gati, or
No,
it
no,
could be
no.
any
Could
Gati?
be anything. I mean, if you look at the stories of where people spent their different lifespans, I mean, most of you have probably attended our series on Bhagwan Mahavir's 27 Lives. And in that series, we did discuss that Bhagwan Mahavir's soul had many lives as Manushya, and the way he uh, progressed in those lives. But in between, we have also learned that he's been to Narak, he's been to Devlok. There have been other life forms of Tiryanj, and all those things. So if we heard in Bhagwan Parshnath's life, one of his, I think his second life that he talked about was that as an elephant. So there is no guarantee, and I hear that it is, I mean, also that it is not difficult to get back to Nigod. Fortunately, we would still remain in circulation. We would not go back to the non-circulatory part of Nigod. But even after having been significantly progressed significantly, it is not impossible or difficult to be thrown right back into Nigod. Vyavar Rasi, definitely, but back to Nigod, where you're sharing a body with an infinite number of other souls.
Even from the time that clock starts,
Yes, even from that
that's all.
time that the
Okay.
clock starts. Yeah.
Okay.
So nature is just, nature is generous as well, but nature reacts to our choices. Nature gives us what we ask for. So the way to refine what we ask for is, first of all, know who we are. Find out what is right for us, good for us, what is our true nature, and then only ask for that. And that is the difficulty. That is why we are all stuck. Because our identification is constantly with the non-self. My body, my family, my work, my achievements. Param Pujya Panyas Labdhi Vallabhiji said, is now Acharya, Vastu Vyakti ane Vyaktitva. Things, people, and your ego, Vyaktitva, who am I? Those are the things that we constantly attach ourselves to. Okay. Shall we end now? I'm sure Meera and Kavita are tired. Okay. If I've said anything that is against the teachings of our Tirthankar Paramatmas, our Guru Bhagwans and Jain Dharma, I ask for forgiveness. जिन आज्ञा विरुद्ध काई पण बोलियो हो ते सभी हूँ मन वचन काय करी तस्मिच्छामि दुक्कडम सर्व मंगल मांगल्यम सर्व कल्याण कारणम प्रधानम सर्वधर्माणाम जैनम जयति शासनम. Keep well and thank you for listening.
पढ़